Okay, so Bradley Benner and Chris with Semantic Mastery, we're here today for the bonus webinar, September 25th, where we're going to be talking about, obviously, the elephant in the room. That's the Google update that's just been released. It's actually, rolling out right now as we speak. So we have to talk about that. This hadn't actually happened last week when we had our normally scheduled webinar. So this is something that we're going to talk about briefly. And then we're also going to talk about what we had scheduled this for originally, which was for getting clients, SEO, video SEO type clients. And I want to walk through that because we didn't get to it last week, and I promised that for today. So I'm going to run right through it. Chris, if anybody jumps in with any questions, please feel free to interrupt me.
Yep.
Okay. So I want to get right into it, guys. The Google update with PBNs being de-indexed. A lot of that, there's a lot of chatter out there, a lot of hype, a lot of people freaking out. The sky is falling, that kind of thing. And it's the same thing that happens every time there's a Google update. If you've been in the business for any amount of time, you know that that's just part of the business. It's part of being an SEO is that you have to deal with this sort of thing. And Google's always trying to crack down on what we do. Also, I'm going to go. Let me just run through these the agenda for today, which is we're talking about the Google updates, PBNs being indexed. I want to point out a nice article that Viper Chill put out. Glenn Alsop with Viper Chill. He always puts out really good posts, and I thought his today was particularly good. Then we'll talk about the new patents and then what to do going forward. We'll touch on that briefly. And then as far as for the getting clients, we're going to try to get through using video to find clients. In other words, we're going to walk through several different type of Boolean searches that I use in Google to find clients. Okay, so to find individual clients and also to be able to find video production companies, which is the better way to go. And we'll talk about that too. Using Vmail to get through to clients, okay? That's something that I promised last week. I was able to locate the old training program that I had put together with a couple other partners in another business that we actually never released or launched the product, but we had completed it. So it's got a different branding on it other than Semantic Mastery, but I assure you the training is still valid, and I'm going to share that with you guys. It will be available for you for free. And also, we're going to talk about video production companies. I mentioned that in competition analysis. And I've got a link here that I'm going to share with you guys. Plus, after the webinar, it'll be available for members to be able to access these files. Okay. All right. So, anyways, back to the Google update. With PBNs being de-indexed, the same thing that happens all the time. And if you're plugged into any sort of SEO magazines or blogs or anything like that, forums, groups, anything, there's just a massive amount of people freaking out and saying, well, SEO is this, and you watch, it's going to be SEO is dead and this and that. It's the same kind of shit we always hear, and it's ridiculous because it's, Google's always been trying to crack down on blog networks. The difference is there's more people doing it now than there ever has been, okay? That there's more smaller SEOs and the guys sitting in their basements working on their computer that are building PBNs now. It's not just large scale networks anymore. There's a bunch of little guys with networks, and Google has found ways algorithmically to find networks, and it's not that difficult. Our resident programmer Chris, who's on the line with us, he's a master at footprints. He can find stuff very easily. So if you don't hide your blogs properly, then they're targets for getting de-indexed. And it's just, that's the nature of the beast. Part of it, guys, is you got to remember that you got to consider your PBNs as throwaways. They're a resource that it's expendable. In other words, you have to consider them as an investment that's going to make a return for a period of time, and then you're going to lose it. I mean, it's just the way you have to look at PBNs. Don't expect to buy a $300 domain and it's going to last you forever and it's going to continue to produce SEO results for you. That's just not the way it works. It's a churn and burn strategy. Obviously, you want to take measures to protect them as long as possible, but inevitably you're going to have sites de-indexed, and that's why I don't recommend spending hundreds of dollars on PBN sites or domains when there's other ways to buy domains for basically a registration fee and then boost the page authority and domain authority of those yourself, so that you're not wasting all that money in case it does get it de-indexed. It doesn't hurt as bad that way, in other words. So, you know, again, PBMs being de-indexed is just part of the business, and it's just affected more people this time. And I think that it's going forward, you're just going to have to be more careful. And by all means, I would not stop building them. I would continue building them, because, in fact, it's probably going to sweep, just like all big updates with Google does, it's going to push a lot of people out of the SEO industry, which means it's going to open up a lot of opportunities for those of us that continue to do what has always worked and will continue to work. It's going to make it easier for us because there will be less people competing. Be easier to find better domains because there'll be less people buying them. Because I bet you there's a ton of people right now that think that's it. I'm through. I had a 15 blog network. I spent $1,000 on building it, and all these hours, countless hours building it, and now my network's de-indexed. That's it. I'm out. I'm done. That happens, and that's a good thing. So those of us that push through and stick it out, we're going to benefit from it. We just got to learn what the new requirements are. Okay, and that's part of the reason why you're here with Semantic Mastery, because we're going to figure it out and give you our what we have found through our tests and through our number of sites and client sites. We have a lot of data that we can crunch to come back with. If we can find any sort of patterns that we can share with you, we certainly will. All right. So with that, I'm going to stick this link in chat, because this is a link from Glenn Alsop with Viper Chill, and a very, very good articles. Let me paste this in. This is a really long article, so bookmark it and come back to it. His articles typically are very long, and it's a good one, and I like how he uses lots of examples. So when you have time, read it. The new patents, there's some new patents that had recently been, I guess, accepted or filed or whatever and approved that Google had on September 2nd, and they are looking back now 3 levels. So 3 tiers of backlinks to look at relevancy, and also they're looking at keywords and that sort of thing. So you got to be careful on what you're doing with, as Chris pointed out when I was telling him prior to starting the broadcast today, it's not completely rolled out. It's going to continue to be rolled out, but it is something that they have started to roll out. So what does that mean for us? Well, that means you've got to consider if you're using spam tools. I had been suggesting for many, many months now that if you're using spam tools, to do them at tier 3, not at tier 1 or obviously never tier 1, but even at tier 2, you can if you know how to use the tools properly, but I would just suggest that you didn't use them at tier 2, because it could get you into trouble if you don't know, like, your follow and no follow ratio, keyword, if you don't know the best kind of anchor text ratios, that sort of thing. It can really get you into trouble even at 2nd tier, and that's up until now. Now I would say that you should be using them at 4th tier, okay, because Google is looking back 3 tiers. You can still use them at 3 tier if you know what you're doing. If you hedge yourself, like start using no follow links, that sort of thing. And that's part of what I would say is with the new patent also, which one of the new patents, because it's several patents, that there's also issues with the keyword relevancy. What they're doing now is they're starting to roll out into their algorithm is that they're looking at the number of anchor text links coming in to your site. So your inbound links containing anchor text, so exact match anchors, the ones that your money keywords, right? They're looking to see how many links are built compared to, it's a correlation with how much search volume there is, actual search volume. So search queries, how many times are those keywords queried in a given month, for example? And I don't know whether, I'm pretty sure it's on a monthly basis, but I don't know what their internal metrics are. But if you have more keyword anchor text ratios coming in than what a natural occurrence of inbound links that would occur naturally, okay, so based on the amount of search queries, then you can get penalized for that, okay? You absolutely get penalized for that. So you got to be really, really careful now, especially with any kind of keyword anchor text links coming in. And I know we should have all been careful with that anyways, but even with the long tail keywords, okay, because if long tail keyword phrases aren't actually searched, like, super long tail, which is kind of like what we've always done, right? When we stopped being able to rank for the more general terms, we go after the long tail and try to push the more general terms up through building long tails, right? But if we have a long tail phrase, and we could use an example, like let's just say tree trimming in Fairfax County, okay, that would be a long tail phrase. That if that's not something that people typically search for, if there's no real search volume for that, and I don't mean showing up in the Google Keyword Planner, that can be an indication, but remember, those numbers aren't exact either, guys. Those are kind of like indicators, but they're not exact match numbers, especially when you get down to local level stuff. The numbers aren't as accurate. Okay, they're more accurate at higher level searches than they are at the low level searches. So those are just an indicator. But if you use a long tail search query and it's got, no search volume registered in the Google Keyword Planner, but all of a sudden you've got, in the last month you've got 6 inbound links with this specific long tail anchor text phrase, then now you've just opened yourself up for a penalty, because it's unnatural. It's not something that people would typically search for, so why would they link to you that way, if that makes sense? So you got to be careful with your inbound link profile if they're do follow. Now, if they're no follow, take all that off the table, and that's where I'm getting at with, if you're going to continue to use PBNs, something that you may want to do besides trying to hide your footprint, because that getting your PBNs de-indexed is not what I'm talking about here. What I'm talking about now is the patents that have just been released that are specifically dealing with inbound link building. Okay, PBNs aside, it doesn't matter whether it's Web 2s, video links, it could be bookmarks, it could be anything, as long as if you're building inbound anchor text links. If you no-follow them, you can get away with whatever, and you can still rank with no-follow links, okay? And you can get away with as much keywords as you want in no-follow links. But if you're doing do-follow links, you have to be extra careful now. And instead of going with trying to balance some sort of ratio with, okay, I need 10% exact match keywords, or 5% exact match, and I need 15% partial match, and I need 25% brand and 40% URL anchors, all of that, like we've always tried to do. I wouldn't worry about all that. What I would try to do is just build more no-follow links, and then the ones that you do send that are do-follow to your site, you do very, very carefully, and only a handful of them, and a very small handful, and let your on-page do the work. In other words, let your on-page optimization do the work for you. Okay, so if you have your site tight, then you don't need that much keyword inbound links to push your site up. So use URL anchors, provided it's not an exact match URL. Okay, if you got an exact match domain, so keywords exact match in your URL, you can tip the balance and trigger a Panda penalty and a Penguin penalty, because there's an overlap now for over optimization of inbound links. Okay, if you have an exact match domain, so you got to be careful with that, and that's part of the reason I tell people not to buy EMDs anymore. You can buy partial match or branded domains, and I always would suggest you go with branded. But if you're going to use a partial match keyword, then that's okay. You just got to be aware that you have a lower threshold for tripping penalties. Okay. So that said, if you're going to be using URL anchors, just make sure that they're not keyword rich. If they are, then you just do less of it. Do more generic, or what I've been told, and I don't have any data to prove this yet, but what I've been told is that we should start using more generalized search terms, the terms that have higher traffic. So on a local level, for example, the tree trimming Fairfax County, or Fairfax, let's just say tree trimming Fairfax, I believe that does have a search volume of like 20 or 30 searches per month, is what the keyword planner shows. I'm not going to pull up the keyword planner, but just take my word for it. It's around that neighborhood. It's a low search volume. But the word tree trimming, which is general, doesn't have the geographic modifier in there at all. That is a highly searched term that gets thousands of searches per month because it's on a national scale. So start building more links, anchor text links back to your site with the highly generalized terms, right? So the broader keywords that don't have the geographic modifiers, because it's very, very likely that people are the keyword data shows that phrase is searched a whole lot more. The search volume is exponentially higher than it is on a local level with the geographic modifier, right?